Yeah, so money is oxygen, but money can come from a number of different places. And we are the venture capital route is the most marketed version or place where money can come from, but it's
Right.
actually serving the smallest number of businesses. Only 1% of businesses ever get venture capital.
If you believe we can change the narrative, if you believe we can change our communities, if you believe we can change the outcomes, then we can change the world. I'm Rob Richardson. Welcome to Disruption Now. But let's take yourself back to that really young, when you were a really young founder, when you were, had the ambitions of the world. I'm sure you still have some of that, but take yourself back when you were first starting in Part Pick. What advice would you give your younger self, knowing what you know now? And then what advice would you ignore that you received from others?
Yeah. So the advice I would give myself is really, really, really dig into the problem. This is what I tell every founder, and it's actually something I think I did pretty well, which was falling in love with the problem that I was trying to solve, not the
Mm.
solution. So for
Falling,
me, I
falling in love with the problem you're trying to solve, not the solution.
with the experience of my customers and then the personal experience of my grandfather, I really, really, really thought deeply about this problem. And I thought, okay, the problem that I want to solve is I want to make it easier for people to find parts. The solution, which I came to around computer vision technology and machine learning and all this, cool technology, that was the solution that I thought was correct for the time. But if I wanted to solve the same problem today, I might go about it a little bit differently. But it's really the root of it was this particular problem, understanding everything about it. Why is it so hard? What particular parts make it more difficult than others? We centered in on fasteners because they don't have a part number on them, or sometimes it can get rubbed off. So that was very important. So I always want to tell people, like, really understand deeply, talk to people, go as deep, deep, deep as you can on the problem before you start to work on the solution.
Oh, that's really great advice, because I think people probably think the opposite way. They start getting right to the solution before really understanding and having a perspective. And I think it's also having empathy for who your customer is, what their experiences actually are, and what they go through, versus saying, "Okay, I know what's best. They need this solution," and not actually understanding the problem, because you don't understand the problem. I think I've never heard it phrased that way, but it makes sense, right? Understanding the problem is really understanding the process, understanding what the people go through, their pain points, their experiences, and really understanding their perspective versus assuming that you have the answer through your solution. I mean,
Exactly.
I never thought about it that way. You're helping me actually think about how I think about disruption now. So you're coaching me right now. So I thank you for that. Like that's actually a great way of looking at it. Um, so what advice would you ignore?
Yeah. So the advice I would ignore, I think it has to do with what I thought was the right way to build a tech startup, where, it was you come up with this idea, you go and you try to attract people to the idea or to you as a founder by building up a team. You go and raise money for it. I thought that that was the right process. And now I would interrogate that a little bit more. So, for example, raising money. There's a lot of talk about raising money. We applaud when folks raise millions and millions of dollars. But now that I know better, I always ask people, what's your end game? Where are you trying to get to? And if that looks like building a business that lasts for, decades that you can pass on to your family, then you probably are not going to want to raise venture capital, because that's not the time horizon that venture capitalists are looking for. So I really think about considering, what does 10 years down the line look like? What does 20 years down the line look like? And working backward from there, instead of just getting on this sort of pathway of raising funding, because that timeline is going to look a little different and the potential outcomes are going to look different.
Yeah, but money is oxygen, right? So how do you balance that out between figuring out how to survive in the immediate versus the long term need? So how do you balance that out? That would be my only question, because you have to. I hear what you're saying, but then how do you figure out the immediate needs too, if you need to have capital.
Yeah, so money is oxygen, but money can come from a number of different places. And we are the venture capital route is the most marketed version or place where money can come from, but it's
Right.
actually serving the smallest number of businesses. Only 1% of businesses ever get venture capital. So that means that there are lots of different other places or sources for capital that might be a better fit for your business. So if I had known that, I would have spent a lot more time pursuing things like SBIR grants, government research grants, because of the deep technology nature of what we were doing and the newness of it, and the fact that it was so novel. So I would have spent a lot more time focused on grant writing and, getting really, really good on getting free money, honestly, as we were doing the development piece, the development process, than even worrying about investors until we had a product in market. So
Yeah.
that's the difference. That's how, reframing it and really finding capital that fits where you are as a business and where you're trying to go.
Right.
That to me is the difference.
And I think again, you're helping me formulate thoughts. So when I think about what we're doing with disruption now and our intentionality here, our goal is to obviously help founders and really help the Black community be more successful. And when I hear you say it the way you described it, I think the best way we do that is helping them build a network, helping them build and connect with the right people, get the right experience, and then make the right connections to actually build their product before ever having to worry about venture capital. That's like the last step. If you've gotten there, there's a lot of other things you have to overcome first, and it makes more sense to figure out how to build a network and how to build the resources before you even get to venture capital. So, I mean, I think it's a great point. But I want to ask one more founder kind of background, then I want to move on to two more actually. One, what is the kind of biggest failure, setback, learning lesson you had as a founder, and how did that set you up for success or help you just become a better leader, entrepreneur, whatever, fill in the blank?
Yeah, I would say the biggest lesson was the importance of relationships in all of it. Every single part of business is really about relationships. And as a early founder, as somebody who wasn't super highly networked at all, I did not really understand how important relationships would be in the whole journey. And there are things that I wish I had done as far as leaning on the relationships I did have to get past certain marks. So, for example, I recently was on the Morgan Stanley podcast with Carla Harris, and I knew Carla she's amazing, prolific woman who has just been a boss on Wall Street for the past 20 plus years. And I knew Carla actually I originally met her when I was a student at Howard, and then was reintroduced to her when I was early in Part Pick pitching.
Right.
And she was someone who I really admired. And she had told me, reach out to me if you have any questions or if you need anything. And at the time when I was thinking about selling Part Pick, I should have reached out to Carla and said, hey,
Right.
This is what's happening. I need your help. She has a lot of experience with mergers and acquisitions.
Sure.
But at the time, I was nervous. I was like, oh, she's too busy, and that was the case for a lot of people that I probably could have reached out to get advice and to understand if I was doing the right thing. But I was in my own head about it, too
Sure.
much, not wanting to bother people. But now, if I had made a few more phone calls and had a few more conversations, I would have had more knowledge as I approached what was, a monster of a transaction. And,
Right.
going through that whole process, mostly by myself, I wish that I would have leaned more heavily on the relationships that I had, and even tried to build some new ones to be able to make it through that, because going through it was tough. It was really, really hard. And I think I could have made it a little bit easier on myself if I would have leaned in on some relationships. And so now, now that I had that experience, it's really shaped how I think about all the things that I do now. So, I'm raising a fund. I have to lean heavily on relationships in order to get that done. It's a big number that we're trying to get to. And
What's
so
the name of the fund again?
Collab Capital is the fund.
Yep.
Hmm.
What's your goal there?
We're raising $50 million.
All right. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. But again, it can't get there without calling the troops and calling some folks that I've been, put a lot of deposits into the relationship. So it's not just a take and let me just call you when I need something. It's like, no, we've been building up this mutually beneficial relationship over years. And so now is the time for me to say, hey, I'm doing something. I need your help. I need you to connect me with folks. And I think that is really how business works. And that's
what you said is so key, right? Building
yeah.
the relationship. Like